welcome back to another episode of the Oner podcast, the podcast where we break down and review films all in one big, long, unbroken take. I'm Austin Archer, and with me, as always, is my childhood next-door neighbor and lifelong best friend,
Cramer 18.
Cramer 18. I'm blending in with my environment today. I didn't realize till we got on here that my shirt is the exact same color as my lighting scheme.
And you have your flower is the same color as the sad face guy.
Yeah, and I wore this shirt because this is the second Bong Joon Ho movie. We're talking about Mickey 17 today. And this is the second Bong Joon Ho movie that seems to have some kind of pro animals rights message in there.
Yeah,
at least there's maybe it's folded into the other ones as well, but Oakjaw was very much critical of kind of the animal food industrial complex, and this movie seems to have some of that as well. And so this got a nice little cow on my shirt.
Nice.
To honor that theme. Yeah, and also I had a tooth pulled recently, so if my mouth is moving weird, that's why. This is the first time I've been on camera since I had my tooth pulled.
Was that today or was that another day?
It was two days ago.
Oh, okay, yeah. So still getting used to life without the tooth.
Yeah, I'll get an implant soon, but it's
nice.
It's just the first little bit where it's just annoying. Yeah, okay. Mickey 17, Bong Joon Ho hits his first film since he won Best Picture for Parasite. This is one of the movies we covered in our predictions for top films of 2025.
Yep.
I've been going back and checking those predictions.
Yeah, I checked it too.
Yeah. I think you so far might be more correct than me. Your prediction was that this movie would fare well with critics and maybe get mixed reviews from audiences. It looks like it's holding pretty steady with critics and audiences around the 75% mark.
Yeah.
Where people are generally liking this. But your prediction was that it was probably not going to make a ton of money. It's on track to do $30 million by the end of or in that neighborhood by the end of its second weekend. So
domestically, and I don't think I ever said domestically because I said I would be surprised if it makes 50 million. And I never said it was domestically, but that's what I was talking about because right now it's at 49 million worldwide. But so I still think I'm pretty good on that one. I still don't know. I mean, it might make it to 50. Yeah, it probably will, but I don't think it'll make much more than that for a $150 million movie.
We will obviously be breaking down kind of the plot of this film. So if you have not seen it, spoiler alert is in effect for this episode. We're going to be talking specifics about the movie, but I'll say that my prediction was I said Bong Joon Ho is a director that I have struggled with historically, and that I always recognize the skill in his films. I always feel like I'm watching a movie that's made by someone who's good at making movies and who is making the movie that he wants to make. I'm watching a craftsman who is executing his craft the way he wants to execute it. I think it's similar to what we said last week, talking about the Royal Tenenbaums, where you either are on board with what Wes Anderson wants to do as a filmmaker or you're not. But it's hard to deny that there's craft there.
Absolutely.
So I can totally see why people would watch a Wes Anderson movie and just go this just isn't connecting with me. This rhythm, this kind of quirkiness isn't connecting with me for some reason. It just doesn't connect with me on an emotional level. And that's been my experience so far with Bong Joon Ho movies. My prediction was that this was going to be the one that broke the trend and made me go okay, I'm on board now. Cause that's sort of what happened with, Yorgos Lanthimos. I was sort of I'd seen all of the Yorgos Lanthimos movies and I was I just am not, I get it. I see that he's doing something. It's just not connecting with me. And then I saw Poor Things and I was I love this movie. I think this movie is fantastic. And since then I've kind of fallen in love with Yorgos Lanthimos' other films. I've gone back and revisited them. I was hoping Mickey 17 would be such a film for me. And I will just say on the outset here that it was not for me, but
I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
This movie was a mess.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. And it didn't even I've only seen Snowpiercer of Bong Joon-ho's movies. I still haven't been able to see Parasite and any of his other stuff, but you know, I again, Snowpiercer was great. I could see his craft, and I did like that movie. And even in this movie, like I see what he's doing. I think he is a very talented filmmaker, but I don't feel like this movie, it was almost too straightforward.
Sure.
I
It
wanted
just
it to be weirder.
Me too.
Yeah.
As odd as some of the characters are, you know, like Mark Ruffalo and Toni Collette are doing some really big character acting here,
Yeah.
and so is Robert Pattinson in the lead role. Like
Yeah.
he's really taking there. So we've got actors who are taking these big,
Yep.
quirky swings, but the plot of the movie is just kind of like you said, it's very straightforward. It's just like
Yeah.
this guy gets on this ship. He's an expendable. His job is to die and be reprinted. He one day accidentally gets reprinted with another version of himself. They kind of
Yep.
they every there's it just I just I don't somehow in a movie that was full of large set pieces and
Yeah.
impressive production design and
Yeah.
movie stars who were taking big swings with their craft. I found this movie to be incredibly boring.
Yes.
Yeah,
The pacing on this movie was horrible.
yeah,
Like it really, like it was so frustrating because it's supposed to be a comedy.
hmm
Like I actually I really love dark comedies because but this wasn't dark enough and it wasn't funny enough.
yeah.
Like it was just kind of like the timing was so off that none of the jokes landed for me. I literally laughed once.
I didn't laugh once at all. The guy next to me that was 2 seats down from me,
Yeah.
who seemed significantly more invested in the film, I
Yeah.
heard him laugh twice. And, you know, like, there were, like, 2 parts where
Yeah.
he was like, "Huh," and I was like and I didn't I was honestly struggling to stay awake, and so, because
Yeah.
of that, I considered seeing it a second time because I was like, "Maybe I'm not giving this movie a fair shake
Mm,
because I
yeah.
went late at night," and I was like, "Maybe I just was too tired and I just need to
Yeah.
go give it another shot." And I've thought about this for a while because I caught Snowpiercer on TV,
Mhm.
a few months ago,
Yeah.
and it was the first time I'd seen it since the first time I watched it, and it
Yeah.
had been years since I watched it. And I liked it a lot more the second time watching it. And
Uh-huh.
so I've thought maybe Bong Joon-ho is just a director that I need 2
Yeah.
viewings with,
Feelings.
and that could be the case here. So if you're in our audience and you're just immediately disagreeing with us, maybe it is the case that we just need to give this another shot because again, like I think we're kind of in the minority here. It seems like critics and audiences are enjoying this film.
Yeah.
Uh I just like I really wanted this to be the movie that like brought me
Yes.
into the Bong Joon-ho fandom.
Yeah.
And I just by the time the credits rolled, I was like, who cares?
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
was like,
It was yeah, it was rough. Like I was checking my watch and like, okay, when is this gonna end? And
I checked my watch, my clock on my phone like several
yeah,
times. I was like, "How long has the movie been going now?" And
yeah,
I was like, "It's probably got maybe 15 minutes left. Okay, I
yeah,
can, yeah." But I was feeling the desire to get up and go home and be like,
yeah,
I'll come back another day. Like I'm gonna like maybe I'm too
yeah,
tired. I'll go home. I'll come back like in 2 days or something."
yeah.
But
Mm,
yeah.
yeah, it was rough. It was, and there were a lot of I mean, he definitely has a lot of themes of class and things like that,
Mhm.
but it wasn't really present. Like that wasn't really part of the movie, but or at least not like a huge part. That's not really the main plot of the movie, but also a lot. It seemed like there were so many different threads that he proposed, but then never really did anything with.
Totally.
And like, especially this theme at the very end of the movie. Again, spoilers, like Austin said. The very end of the movie, right before Mickey 18 uh, blows himself up, and
Mhm.
Mark Ruffalo's like, "Oh, see, you're afraid. Like you do have a soul." And I was like, "Where is that coming from?" Like
You're right. We
I
never
really like this idea of like, do they have a soul or do they not? And like they talk about it like once before, but I'm like, you never brought that up again. Like,
well, and the theme of like Mickey 17 and Mickey 18 being so different, that like the only way that Mickey is ever aware that he's different from the other versions of himself is because he meets Mickey 18, and then his girlfriend Nasha tells him, yeah, Mickey 12 was a little bit more like this, Mickey 8 was and so that's like you said, that's a very interesting concept that the movie doesn't really do anything with. It introduces the idea that like all these different versions of Mickey that are getting printed out. So the plot of the movie in a nutshell is, we should, just say is, in a future where, as we've seen in so many different sci-fi movies, mankind is using up the resources on Earth. So they are expanding out into colonization missions to colonize other planets. There is this giant spaceship that's going to take a colony of humans to another planet. And one of the jobs on this spaceship is to be an expendable, where you are a person whose job it is to sort of like test out different ways that humans might die on this colonization exploration. And humans have developed this machine that can basically 3D print a clone of you every time you die. And there's this kind of core of the spaceship that takes all of the organic material that gets, whether it's food or poop or pee or whatever, and it uses all of that raw material to 3D print new versions of you, and then implants a memory upload of the guy that you were before you died. Which all of this is like, from a sci-fi perspective, very interesting.
Really, love it.
Really cool concepts. The concepts of like late stage capitalism just printing resources. The idea of like 3D printing or AI generated stuff where it's like, like, where's the reality of the human component to it? Printing money, like, what is money? It's something we just give value to, and we can just create more of it. And the idea of reducing that down to like, you're printing human beings and just using human beings as this like infinite resource. Very interesting stuff. I just feel like this movie doesn't have enough to do with all of this interesting material. It just sort of presents this story that's like, then this happens, then this happens, then this happens, the end. And it's like, okay, but you have all these themes that just seem like they're just sort of there. And they're begging to be examined in some kind of way by the plot, but the plot doesn't really like the plot is honestly kind of thin, because the plot of Mickey 17 is like, they arrive at this planet that they're going to. They discover that there are these animals that live underground on this ice planet, and they just decide that they want to eat the animals. And the animals turn out to be like intelligent, and that's the plot. It's just sort of like, they want to eat the animals, but the animals are smart, and Mickey 17 and 18 have a conversation with the animals where they're like, oh, the animals are actually smart, so we shouldn't eat them. And that's the entire, like, that's really kind of like the whole movie. And
he summed it up pretty well. It's not, I mean, it definitely, there's like there's class things going on. There's also kind of like I felt like the biggest theme that they did through the most of the movie was kind of colonization and like overtake, the theme. So Toni Collette, she wants the tails of the animals so that she can make a sauce. And
I'll be honest, I didn't get what I didn't get it. How her character was obsessed with sauce. I didn't get it.
I was really, really trying to find a meaning behind the sauce of it. Like, what does the sauce mean? The only thing that I could come up with that kind of made sense to me, like, she cuts off the tail, she makes the sauce, and she just gets rid of the rest of she would get rid of the rest of the animal, and she just wants a tail. And the only thing that I thought of is like, okay, we have all these land wars, and like people colonize for when you break it down, it could be a very dumb reason, right? It's for resources. And we think of other species or other people as less than human.
Expendable.
They're expendable, right? And so like, they keep saying these aliens are monsters. They don't, they're animals. They can't even think, and like,
they call them creeper.
Exactly. Yeah, creepers. And so it's kind of like, okay, she wants this dumb resource and she's demeaning these other intelligent creatures just to get it, which is kind of,
But
could be
also
like
it's
the
like
theme.
I feel like the first time they encountered these beings and they
Yeah.
bring back the first time they have a live specimen, the first one they've ever encountered, she immediately knows that by cutting off its tail, she can grind its tail up and to make a sauce. And I was
Yeah.
like, I just kind of felt like, am I missing information? Because the movie's based on a book. And I was like, is there something like, did like an advanced reconnaissance team encounter these species and like find out that there's like some kind of supple juice inside of their tails that's made? Because I was like, why
Yeah.
would she just be like, ooh, interesting, I bet if I cut its tail off and grind it up I can make a sauce? And it's like, why wouldn't you try the head or the
Yeah.
organs or the
Yeah.
blood? Or like, why would it just seemed like the movie was just like, yeah, I get what you're saying, that like
Yeah.
part of extractionism and
Right.
colonization is you move into a territory for a resource, you extract the resource you want, you kind of dispose of the rest, and you kind
Yeah.
of callously throw the rest away. We go into the Amazon rainforest and we extract the wood and we extract the resources we want, and we completely disregard all of the animals who
Right.
call that home, and also the balance of the ecosystem
Right.
that
Right.
needs, like the trees that suck up the carbon out of the
Mhm.
air and things like that.
Yeah.
I get that, but I just go like, but in this context of this story, why does her character know that the tail is
Yeah.
the spot to make the sauce out of?
Yeah.
And is that, and am I just thinking too hard about it? And I'm just supposed to go like, I don't know,
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a good point. Like, how did she know? But I think it's dumb because it's almost like a lucky guess. She's like, oh, and she cuts the tail off and then makes the sauce. It's like, oh, this is great. Now I need all the tails. So yeah, I don't know.
But why wouldn't she be like, hey,
Right.
since
Let's
this
try
is
other things. Like what?
since exactly, like,
Yeah.
since this,
Yeah.
like, human beings, when they first started eating animals, we try every part of the
Yeah.
animal. Like, we're
Yeah.
like we're eating cow brains, and we're
Yeah.
eating like bull testicles, and we're
Yeah.
eating like,
Yeah. Yeah.
we're trying all the different parts and
Yeah.
finding out which ones we like the most and which one,
Yeah.
obviously there's a lot uh in our food industry and ecosystem where we are ditching parts. But like
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
chicken McNuggets are just like, it's like leftover chicken parts. Like, whatever
Right.
chicken parts aren't used, they grind them up in a grinder and they turn them into McNuggets. Like, we're trying to use as
Yes.
many, or hot dogs. It's just sort of
Yeah.
like ground up extra
Yeah.
parts of a pig put into
Yes.
like an intestine sleeve, and like
Yes.
that's a hot dog. But so like, I get the commentary being made that she's just sort of
Yes.
callously
Yeah.
throwing this thing away, but I'm like, but why, if you're settlers and colonizers in this new place, why wouldn't you be like, let's try every piece of it? And the movie could have her just go, you know what, we only like the tails, so let's just bring me all their tails.
Yeah.
Like, that to me, I just would narratively make more sense, that it's like she tries all these other parts of them and she goes, you know what, I just want the tails. And then we have, I don't know,
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
a story about extractionism where she like finds the one part of these intelligent creatures that she can use, and she
Yeah.
goes, go out and get all their tails for me. But she just
Yeah.
tries the tail once and doesn't bother with she's like, go get all their tails. And it's like, I just kind of think that it's like incomplete storytelling. It's like
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there was a lot that felt incomplete or unfulfilled.
yeah.
I think that's kind of it's the whole, like, I kept thinking that the movie might go in a lot of different directions,
Mhm.
and it never really did. And it was kind of I mean, it was disappointing, and it was like, well, where is this? Why aren't you going this way? This seems very interesting, but then it turned out not to be.
Yeah,
And
because a big part of the dark humor of the film is the way that Mickey's fellow crew members and fellow
yeah,
humans treat him once he
yeah,
is an expendable. The fact, like, there's like these like kind of darkly funny sequences of like the montage of his different deaths, where
yeah,
people will kind of explain to him through the radio, like, so here's what's going to happen, we want you to
yeah,
report to us the moment that your skin starts boiling, and then we want
yeah,
you to report,
yeah,
and like, and there seems to be, as we've already discussed, obviously in this movie, as with many of Bong Joon Ho's movies, there are themes of social class and
yeah,
the nature of using human beings as resources for
Yeah.
capital and the treating human beings as expendable. And in this movie, it's sort of played as a dark joke that the other people on the ship, because Mickey is capable of just being reprinted, assume that he's okay with just dying over and over again. And no
Yeah.
one ever
Yeah.
seems, I mean, that's how the movie opens. Like, it opens with a sequence of one of his closest friends just being like, "Hey, if you're cool, I'm just going to leave you down there to die because we'll just reprint you."
Yeah.
And it's sort of played as a joke the whole movie, but
Yeah.
the movie never really pays this off. It just kind of like, by the end of the movie, everyone's just like, "Hey, Mickey, we're cool, right?" And he's like, "Yeah, we're cool." And like,
Yeah.
I feel like they don't do anything with the fact that all of Mickey's friends and all of the people in Mickey's life, kind of, even his girlfriend, sort of just seems
Yeah.
mostly okay. I mean, there is a
Yeah.
sequence where he says, "She always came and visited me whenever I was going
Right.
through, and took
Right.
care of me." But she still kind of seems kind of like she shrugs her shoulders at the fact that he's it seems like she
Yeah.
should care more about the fact that Mickey is
Yeah.
going through all these, like,
Yeah.
but she just kind of treats it like, this is my boyfriend. He dies every few days and then a new version of him gets reprinted. And,
Yeah.
you
Well,
know,
and I kind of, I mean, there were really the first death that we see is him coming out of the ship,
mhm,
and they're like, "Okay, you're being exposed to a lot of radiation." They basically lied to him, and they're like,
yeah.
"Oh, you're actually being exposed to radiation. We just want to see how you react." And he's like, "Okay."
Mhm,
I thought that one was, I liked that part.
mhm.
It was interesting, but the rest of his deaths, they they're pretty mediocre. It was mainly putting him in a tube and filling him with gas, and then like going outside and like breathing in the air and finding the parasite that will kill humans, which he does. But then he ends up in the tube again, and I was like, okay, this is not very interesting. Why don't you kill him in more interesting ways? Like, I know that's
Yeah,
a bad thing to say, but like, it becomes very mediocre when he just sits in a tube and throws up blood all the time.
totally. There's like 9 in a row where he dies the same way. And
Yeah,
it's like, okay, obviously the premise here seems to be like, especially starting out being like, the first way we're going to kill you is have you go outside and be exposed to radiation and
yeah,
see how
yes,
long it takes. The second way we're going to kill you is have you go down to the surface of the planet, take your helmet off and
right,
breathe in so we can develop a vaccine for
yep,
whatever
yeah,
pathogens are in the air. But you're thinking we're setting up some kind of fun montage of like, think of like the Edge of Tomorrow, like
yeah,
this mod, like
yes,
all the different ways that Tom Cruise dies and comes back to life and has to like keep going through this battlefield. But
yeah,
instead it's like, once we get to trying to develop the vaccine for the airborne pathogen, it's just them going through trial and error of like, he keeps dying every time they try a new vaccine on him, and it
yeah,
keeps not working until it works. And it's like, that seems like a wasted opportunity of something really fun the movie could have done, of like a montage of him dying in all of these different interesting funny
yeah,
ways.
yeah.
And yeah,
Darkly comedic ways that,
right,
I mean, it would be great. I mean, yeah, going with the premise of this movie, like that, I felt like that probably would be. My thought initially was that was what was going to be the movie. It was going to be very
sure,
interesting ways that he dies, and then he basically is going to realize like, this is not, like, this shouldn't be happening, and like, this is wrong, and like, if I'm dying all this time, what does that mean for me as a person? Do I have a soul anyway? And having two, like, how do two coexist anyway? That was never brought up. It was just he died in a
right,
tube all the time, and yeah, his girlfriend was pretty nonchalant about it, besides the fact that she wanted to be there with him. But
right,
they really didn't care about this whole process until the very end. And then in the end, they're like, "Oh, this is really bad. Let's blow up the cloning the copier, or whatever." And it was like, okay, well, you guys didn't really care about it before. Like, why are you caring about it now? I understand why, but why wasn't
right.
that throughout the whole movie?
So let's talk about the ending of this film, because how
Yeah,
rushed did that kind of like epilogue feel? Like, it's like the big
yeah,
climax of the movie is once Mark Ruffalo and Toni Collette discover that there's doubles on board. Which is
yeah,
also a thing that like the movie sort of just like rushes through, like, oh, by the way, it's bad to have doubles
yeah, yeah,
like, it's bad, like we've invented a cloning machine, and we decided that it's bad to have doubles. That it's like, and it's
yeah,
like, and even that's like, it's not really, the explanation is just kind of like, one guy did bad things with doubles, so we
yeah,
decided. But it's
yeah,
like, okay, all right, sure, why not? But then it becomes like this capital offense to have doubles, and you'll be permanently erased if you're ever found to have doubles. But then like no, again, the movie sets this up, but then nobody seems to care. Like his girlfriend, as soon as she finds out there's doubles, is like, ah, cool, threesome with my two boyfriends. Like nobody seems to be taking it very seriously. And then even like Mark Ruffalo, when he finds it out, he's like, well, Mickey 17 and 18, rather than like killing them and executing them, he's like, I'm going to send you two out to go get the tails of the animals that we need, and like, and then, he puts like explosive vests on them, and the, Mickey 18, as you already mentioned, sort of makes this heroic sacrifice and like blows himself up on Mark Ruffalo and kills both of them. But then like we just sort of do like a 6 months later, and it's just like everyone after Mark Ruffalo and Toni Collette died decided that they were going to like get rid of the cloning machine and be nice to Mickey and coexist with the animals. And somehow Nasha's like now leading the government, and they do this in like a really quick kind of hurried montage that's like, oh, okay, sure. All right. Why not? Also, I don't know if you felt like this was a plot hole. I definitely did. As soon as Mickey 18 like pushed the button on Mark Ruffalo and blew himself up, I was like, wouldn't that also trigger the like?
That's kind of what I thought. Yeah.
I was like,
wouldn't Mickey 17 blow up too?
Yeah, because like Mark Ruffalo's got this like this thing on his wrist that has buttons that say 17 and 18. And if he pushes the buttons, then both Mickeys blow up. Or if he pushes either button, that Mickey blows up. 18 pushes his button, blowing them both up. But it's like, okay, if the button being pressed or depressed somehow triggers the mechanism, wouldn't 17 just blow up too? But yeah,
it was weird. And also the after the 6 months later, it was weird because it started out, it said 6 months later, and they're like at this event where they're going to blow up the printer, and Nasha's she's conducting it all and everything, and it's like, oh, everybody got along. But then they go back again, and they're like, oh yeah, we were all arrested and we had to like work through it, and like people were mad, and then it goes back, and I was like, why didn't you do that first?
Yeah, totally.
Like here's what happened. Like, so after this, we got put on trial and do that piece, and then go to the 6 months later and show everybody happy. Like, it was such a weird way to do that.
This movie does that several times, and I don't think that any of them are like add to them, because like, we've talked about movies that are like out of sequence, like The Prestige or things, where it works. But it's like, even the fact that like this movie's opening shot, which I think is this movie's really well shot. It looks great.
Oh yeah, looks beautiful.
The opening shot is beautiful. It's like Robert Pattinson lying in snow, and it sort of fades in, and his face is covered in snow, and he's wearing these goggles, and he takes these goggles off, and Steven Yeun kind of like drops in into this ravine that he's in, and is like, hey Mickey, and he's like, what's it like to die, man? And and he goes, what Mickey are you, by the way, like 12 or 13? He's like, I'm 17. And then Mickey sort of retroactively explain, it's kind of like I bet you're wondering how I got here kind of thing. And he goes back and tells the story, but I still was like, I think that the movie probably could have just been better off just starting on Earth and starting with like Mickey and his friend who get into this bad deal with this gangster, and they have to escape the gangster, and they have to get on this ship, and then the only way for Mickey to get on the ship is to sign up to be an expendable, and he doesn't know what that is, and he finds out like that being an expendable means that he dies every few days, and we find that out with him. Like, I think that like that could have been, I just don't, because even like the whole explaining why doubles are a bad thing, like we don't find that out till like midway through the movie when Mickey is accidentally doubled up with 18, and then he goes back, and we go through this whole montage of like why doubles are bad, and I was like, maybe I don't know, some of this stuff just it's not that I don't understand flashback or like out of sequence storytelling. It just sometimes when they would do that stuff, it felt like the movie had to like pause to be like, oh, by the way, some information, here's some information we forgot to tell you, this happened, and that's why things are like this, and it's like, okay, like I don't know.
Yeah, it felt way more expositional rather than like natural for the story. Like The Prestige is out of order because narratively we're learning things as we go along, and it is developing the characters, and it's telling us about their story while withholding things that have happened, that reveal more about the characters. So narratively, there's a reason for it to be out of sequence. This didn't feel like it needed to be out of sequence. So
Yeah.
many parts. Like, it's fine if you want to start the movie where it did and go back, even though it wasn't really necessary. But then, like, this, and this happened a few other times, but like the 6 months later, and then going back again to what happened at, like, just do it first. Like, it's not adding to the character, it's not adding to the story. It just feels like sloppy filmmaking.
Yeah, because even the way that they do the doubles thing,
Yeah.
what happens is Mickey 17 gets left for dead by his friend.
Yes. Yeah.
And these animals come out that he assumes are going to eat him, and
Yeah.
everyone just assumes the animals will eat him. But what they do is they pick him up and they take him and they kind of put him back where he's supposed to go, and they sort of deliver him back to the ship. And so he kind of like makes his way back to the ship. And when he gets back there, obviously Mickey 18 has already been printed. So he goes back to his room and finds Mickey 18. And then he's like, oh, it's almost like the movie's like, oh crap. Sorry, I have to explain to you. The reason why this is a problem is because doubles are actually illegal. But it's like if we already knew this, then we as the audience would be going, oh no, doubles.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
instead of like the movie having to like Mickey 17 and 18 are like, oh no, doubles. But then the movie has to stop and be like, ah, crap, we forgot to tell you. Doubles are bad because like,
it almost felt like the movie thought, okay, everybody's going to have seen the trailers, so they'll know this. But then, like, they had to explain it. So it was almost as well like they were leading up to Red Hulk, and like, oh, you're not supposed to know this.
Right.
But either way didn't work. Like, you should have started out with, oh yeah, doubles are super bad because of this, this, and this, and like, then it would just add to the tension of, oh crap, he's going to have a double and he's going to have a real hard time trying to figure out how to work with it. But no, it just happens. Like, oh yeah, remember, doubles are bad, or just so you know, doubles are really bad. So it did not work narratively.
Right. And again, the trailers probably shouldn't have given away that a big part of the movie was going to be that Mickey was going to have a double. Because you could have done something with the movie where you explain. It's kind of like, a good comp of like a movie that has a lot of exposition to get out of the way for its future premise is Looper by Rian Johnson. Where the movie just kind of has to tell you like, hey, here's what's going on. And I think I kind of like that movie just sort of like gets it out of the way. Like, it's just sort of like, let me just tell you, like, here's what it is like, at some point we developed time travel in the future, not yet, but we have developed it in the future. So what's happening is like mob bosses are using like hired assassins up into a certain point, and then they send them back in time, and we kill them here, and then like that, and that's how we dispose of bodies. And it just sort of like explains to you like the rules of this future. And I feel like this movie literally could have just been like, so here's what happened, we invented this like this like human printing machine, like my friend and I got, and and then we're aware of everything, and we can like go into the adventure knowing everything we need to know, so that as things unfold, we go like, oh no, double, or but it just feels like the movie is like, it's like forgetting to get like, exactly, like the ending is such a great example of that like the movie's already on to its epilogue, and then it like stops in the middle of the epilogue and is like, oh, the reason why what's happening right now is happening is because in the 6 months, when we said 6 months later, there was like a thing that happened in that interim that, and it's like, well, then you can't go like, you can't in a movie be like 3 years later and then like show 3 years later and then be like, also here's what happened during the 3 years. It's like, well, it's like do one or the other.
Me. You could have very easily rearranged that scene, or that whole section, and had it be, right after this happened, we went on trial and we did all this, and then Nasha became the president or whatever, and that would have been fine. But like, I kept having to tell myself like, wait, when was this?
Right.
Like, it totally took me out of the movie. Like, it's so weird. And then there's the whole, the after they have all that, then we get into this weird dream sequence where Mickey like so Mark Ruffalo is definitely dead. And
Mhm.
then Toni Collette, they said they took her to prison, and she did she kill herself or did she just kind of go crazy? I guess
I
they never say, and they don't really know. Isn't that what it
yeah.
was?
Yeah.
Yeah. But then Mickey goes up and she's at the printer. Toni Collette is at the printer and she's printing out her husband. And they have this whole long drawn out scene. And then it just turns out it was a nightmare. And that was so
Yeah.
dumb. I was like, what? I didn't
Right.
get it. I did not get that. If anyone knows what that means, or what I mean, he's having dreams, he's having nightmares, and he's just kind of like, oh, I'm getting over my fear. Is it anything more than that? It just felt like they put so much emphasis on it. I feel like there should have been a deeper theme, and I didn't get it. So if anyone knows, please let me know, and maybe it would make more sense.
Again, in Bong Joon-ho's movies, he's often got these character actors doing I mean, like Mark Ruffalo and Toni Collette are swinging for the fences here with like these
Yeah.
like big
Yeah.
choices. And like I said, Robert Pattinson, I think, is doing really interesting, especially
Yeah.
voice work.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
like
Yeah.
the voice work is so fascinating.
Yeah. Loved it.
I just wish that the movie had the movie was a better vehicle for these performances, because
Yeah.
I'm sitting here going, Toni Collette and Mark Ruffalo are giving performances that I want to be like delighting in. But I
Yeah.
just found like every sequence with I found every sequence with them kind of like the death montage with Mickey. It felt like every sequence with them was just the same thing.
Yeah.
Like every time
Yeah.
we saw them, it was just them being like, they would just do the same thing every
Yeah.
time. They would just like, they never, their characters didn't they were just like, "Oh, we're just here to be like the evil
Yeah.
capitalists with like the
Yeah.
fake teeth
Yeah.
who kind of smile for the cameras and do our little flashy song and
Yeah.
dance." But
And it,
they didn't have any scheming going on or anything. They were just like, "Hey, we're just the weird rich people." And I was like, "Cool, yeah, you're doing the same thing you were doing last time we saw you." You
yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really was. And it was there wasn't, he was insecure, so he'd go up to his wife and he'd whisper to her, and she's like, you gotta go for it, baby, go hard or whatever. And he's like, yeah, I'm gonna go hard. So he overcompensates. But that happened every scene they were in. Like,
Right.
okay, I get it. You've made the point.
Right.
Make another point. Like, you don't have to keep making the same point. That's when
Make
it
a
gets really
different joke.
frustrating.
Tell a different
Yes.
joke. Like, do
Yeah.
something else in this comedy with these characters, because Mark Ruffalo and Toni Collette are capable actors that are
Yeah.
obviously game. And I don't know. I just kind of
Yeah.
felt like ultimately their evilness was just sort of like kind of basic. It was like,
Yeah.
yeah.
It was.
And
Yeah.
also there wasn't enough to separate them from everyone else, because I felt like it should have been like, like in Snowpiercer, it's like there's a very clear class divide. I think
Mhm.
that like the ultimate thing of like getting to the front train car and
Yeah.
finding out that Ed
Yeah.
Harris is the one who's been pulling the strings the entire time, that he was sending notes back to the back
Right.
train car to create a revolution, because they
Right.
needed to call the herd. They needed to like move some of the people from the back up through the brakes so they could kill them in like some of those cars, and just sort of thin out the herd a little bit.
Right. Right.
And like that whole thing, I'm like, that's really interesting. This
Yeah.
movie, it's like, yeah, Mark Ruffalo and Toni Collette are kind of despicable people, but
Yeah.
so it seems are everyone. I just kind of feel like all the characters on this ship, like no one seems to be bothered by the fact that like they're all eating gruel and stuff every day. The
Yeah.
only person who seems to even notice that there's anything wrong is Mickey. And then even to that end, we find out that Mickey 17, our main Mickey that we're following, is a different version of Mickey than the other Mickeys. So like Mickey
Mhm.
Prime, who was the guy at the beginning of the movie, we're like, is that the same guy as our main protagonist Mickey
Yeah.
17? Because Mickey 17 and Mickey 18 are so different from each other.
Yeah.
It sort
Yeah.
of begs this question of like, well, how different is each version of Mickey? And if that is a thing in the movie, shouldn't the movie be interested in exploring that more? And
Right. Yeah.
I don't know.
It would have been really that would have been very interesting to explore more of. But we got a hodgepodge of this movie. And it
Yeah.
was, yeah, it's disappointing. It would have, yeah, it would have been nice if it was way. I feel like too, like we had already talked about, this movie is a dark comedy, but it didn't go comedic enough. Like, I wanted it to be funnier and zanier and like sillier. Not necessarily like silly, but you know, I don't know what's a good comparison. I like a Terry Gilliam movie or something.
Sure. Yeah.
Like where they're, you know, they're kind of over the top and it's a little crazy, but he's kind of the, you know, the moral center of it. But it really wasn't that. Like Toni Collette and Mark Ruffalo were that, but nobody else was going around it. It just kind of, it didn't push them to their max to where it would make it such a satire that it makes you go, oh yeah, you know, that's
Well, and
kind of how
like
real things are.
I just didn't like the ancillary characters were so thin. Like his
Yeah.
girlfriend was such a thin character, and then this
Yeah.
other woman
Yeah.
who's like her and her girlfriend who they're there, but they were so thin. And then there's like one scene where she tries to kind of come on to Mickey 17, but
Yeah.
he's like, no, I can't betray Nasha. But it's they don't really the movie doesn't want to do anything with that. And even Steven Yeun's character, it just was like, okay, so he's just got a best friend who's kind of a scumbag, who's just like a
Yeah.
bad guy.
Yeah.
And I I feel like the other characters were just I feel like a lot of the characters were just kind of like it was like one dimensional. It was just like
Yeah.
Nasha's one thing is that she loves Mickey, all the different versions of Mickey's, and she loves
Yeah.
having sex with Mickey. Like she loves hooking up with all the different versions of Mickey. And
Yeah.
she's kind of nice to Mickey, but maybe she's the only person on the ship that's nice to Mickey. Steven
Yeah.
Yeun's character is that he's just like a scumbag, and he's gonna be a scumbag the whole movie. And then Mark Ruffalo and Toni Collette is just like they are this weird rich couple that
Yeah.
likes sauce and like, but
Yeah.
there's no it just like the movie I just kept waiting for the movie to like do something with any of these pieces that was like unexpected or
Yeah.
that flipped things in a certain way that went, oh, because like Parasite, his Bong Joon-ho's Best Picture award-winning film
Right.
has a fantastic mid-film twist that I won't spoil here and I won't tell you, but it's like it's got a thing that happens in the middle of the movie that sort of flips the whole movie on its head and
Mm.
recontextualizes everything
Mhm.
and deepens all of the movie's themes. Snowpiercer again has an ending that really sort of the whole movie around and makes you go, oh,
Yeah.
and enriches the themes. Okja has some of that. And these are all films again that I still struggled with. This
Yeah.
movie, I just was like, I feel like all of the regular themes are here. I
Yeah.
feel like the movie looks great, has good production design, has really first-rate actors, but there's from a plot perspective and a writing perspective, nothing very interesting is happening, you know?
No, it's not. And
Yeah.
I think you're totally right. It would have been nice to have something that flipped things around, you know, and kind of like change things up. But it really, as we've talked about, it was very, very straightforward. It was pretty cut and dry. You never really got lost. Like I mean, besides the fact that they went 6 years or 6 months in the future and then went back to the beginning, you know, other than that. But like I could follow pretty much what was going on and it wasn't anything there wasn't anything unique or uh differentiating about it. So and I don't how did you feel about the voiceover? Like I understood why it was there, but it was really, really distracting in the
Yeah.
beginning.
Yeah.
Like I didn't really it was kind of weird. Like sometimes Mickey was talking and then I'm like, wait, is he talking or is it the voiceover? Like I didn't get it. And it also just didn't really flow with the movie.
And it
And
again, because it's a movie that's constructed weird narratively.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
the voiceover will just pop in and be like, "Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you guys this." And then
yeah,
like will tell us something that it's like, I don't know why you put that there. Like you could have just told us that earlier. Like you or like
yeah,
that could have been revealed to us in the narrative earlier
yeah,
somehow, you know? Uh yeah.
yeah. And I didn't love I mean, the voiceover for Looper,
Mhm.
like you'd referenced, like it really is, it knows what it is. It's expositional. And it just works well because it's also noirish,
Yep.
but this was not noirish. Like you
Yeah.
know, it was really just it just kind of felt really out of place. Like I understand, like we probably needed to have it for this version of the film, but I feel like there's probably a version where it doesn't really need to be there.
Yeah. I
So
also feel like just the characters of the creepers, like these creatures that live
yeah,
on this planet, were sort of underexplored. I feel like it's a missed
yeah,
opportunity where like you have the opportunity here to do something like what Arrival manages to do with the relationship between the heptapods and the humans. Like
yeah,
once it's discovered that these are intelligent beings who we're capable of communicating
yes,
with,
yeah,
it feels like the movie just like there's just this one scientist girl who's like, "Hey, we built a little machine so that you can talk to them." And
yeah,
and then like they
in
just
like
sort of
5 minutes.
yep, and they just go over there and talk to him and they're like, "Hi, don't kill us. We are intelligent." They're like, "Oh, okay." And it's just like I feel like but like that's a whole
Yeah,
thing that you can really do something with. Like
yeah,
I
yeah,
I don't know. I just feel like that was underexplored. That whole thing of like again, if you want it to be a movie about human extractionism, I feel like Avatar does a better job of like telling the story of
yeah,
colonialism and
yeah, yeah, totally.
and extraction of like showing up to this alien planet and then having to kind of ingratiate yourself to the native population and the indigenous population and get to
Yeah,
understand them. You've got Giovanni Ribisi calling them savages and stuff like
yeah,
that, but it's like
yeah,
no, these are actual people with a beautiful culture. It's like, hey, if this is an intelligent species that's capable of kind of telepathic communication, like
mhm,
maybe we can learn a little bit more about the local culture or something, because even in like the 6 month later flash forward, it's like
yeah,
maybe there's something that's like some sort of society that's developing between these animals and the humans, or I don't know. Like it just feels a little like this thing that's just there, but they don't the
yeah,
movie doesn't have anything to do with it, you know?
yeah. No, and I mean, I feel like that's a sum up of the movie. There's a
Right.
lot of things that are put forth that never really go anywhere because she does say, like, he's like, "Oh, they're savage," or he doesn't say savages. He's like, "They're animals, and they're just these weird aliens." And she's like, Nasha says, "Don't you realize that we are the aliens?"
Right.
Right? She's like, "We're the aliens on this planet." And
Right.
I was like, "Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. Like, I like that concept, but that's all that they do."
Right.
Like and then they move on. And it's like, okay,
Exactly. Yeah, this movie will occasionally have a line that's
yeah,
like, "Oh, so you do have a soul," something like that. And
yeah,
it's like, cool. Occasionally, this movie will be like, "Here's a theme
yeah,
that could be present in this story," and you hear it and go, "Yes," but the movie just doesn't do enough with that. It's like, yeah, that's an
right.
interesting theme. Like, and the
Yeah,
movie could just be that. It could be about like this conflict between this alien species and them realizing
right.
we're the invading alien species.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's but like it's just sort of in a throwaway line where it's like, yeah,
mhm,
it's kind of like the whole cutting off the tail and throwing away the rest of the body thing. It's
yeah,
like, yes, I get what's being said here, but go deeper into that,
yeah, yeah,
show, don't be afraid to get messier with it. And
yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think we said pretty much
Yeah.
everything about the movie.
Yeah.
I don't
And
know if
again, we're obviously in the minority here. So there might be people who
yeah,
watch this episode and go like, "Oh, you guys totally missed it." And maybe we
yeah.
did. And maybe
And
this is a movie. Yeah.
if we did, please tell us, like, why you liked it, what it was that we missed, or if there are deeper themes that we missed out on, because I mean, if I'm wrong and I watch it again and I love it, that'd be great. But I don't know. I mean, it was not a great first time experience.
I will say this before we get into scores.
Okay.
I don't want to like discourage people from seeing movies like this because
Yeah.
I want Hollywood and the studios to be funding the work of directors like Bong Joon-ho.
Yes.
I want
Yes.
even though this one didn't really work for me, I still want movies like this to get made.
Yeah.
And I know that this is based on a book, but it's not based on like some hugely popular IP that's,
No.
like a comic book franchise or, I still like that this has elements that feel new and feel fresh.
Yes.
And so I want people to
Yeah.
see movies like this and form their own opinions. And
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Go out and see it. I mean, it's know what you're getting into.
Mhm.
If you have low expectations, a lot of times that's better going into a movie. So have low expectations and maybe you'll love it. But yeah, we need more movies. This is not an original movie,
Yeah.
but it feels like an original movie.
Mhm.
and it's more in that category of, because I think they bought the rights before the book was even published, which a lot of companies do now. So because the book is called Mickey 7, it's not 17, and also I guess there's a lot of changes that were made. But yeah, it'd be great to have more original movies, and great to have more auteurs that take chances. Because this took a chance, but for us it didn't land. But make more of these movies, because it's every so often they are going to land, and they'll land hard, and they'll be very influential. I don't think this movie will be particularly influential.
On that front, let's discuss our scores for Mickey 17. So, if this is your first time listening to an episode of the Oner podcast, we give a variety of scores. We give a technical rating, that's for craft and just the ultimate overall technical assembly of the film, cinematography, musical score, acting, writing, visual effects, all that jazz. Production design, things like that. We give a score for the ending. How well did the movie stick the ending? We give a score for rewatchability. We give a score for cultural impact, and we give a subjective rating. So, Cramer, what is your technical score for Mickey 17?
Oh, excuse me. Sorry. My technical score, this was definitely, I gave it a 7. It's going to be my highest score because like we've talked about, the production design is really good. The acting is really good for what it was. Like, Robert Pattinson is a really talented actor. When he plays these strange offbeat characters, he's really fun to watch, and he was fun to watch. I wish it was a different type of movie. But the cinematography looked really great. The writing wasn't great. So I think 7 for all the other, the other things that it had going for it.
Yeah, that's exactly where I had it, was at a 7, because that's the most I could say about this movie. Was the actors are all, at least the, kind of Mark Ruffalo, Toni Collette, and Robert Pattinson. And I even think Steven Yeun's doing some
I love
fun
Steven
stuff.
Yeun. He's a great, I like him as an actor.
I just think that the character's kind of flat, but I enjoy watching these big swings that some of these other actors are taking. And then, some beautiful production design, amazing cinematography, fantastic. Like, the movie looks great. I just wish it was a better story. I just wish it was a story that was more, and maybe it's just something about Bong Joon-ho's narrative style that just doesn't grab me. But so I put it at a 7 as well. What did you give the ending of this film?
The ending I gave a 3, and that's mainly because it was not satisfying to me. And then there were a lot of themes that were like wrapped up or proposed that never got wrapped up, right? Like all the stuff that we talked about, her talking about us being the aliens, and Mark Ruffalo talking about, you do have a soul. Like, okay, that's great, but you're paying off things that weren't set up, or you're setting up things that are never paid off. And then the ending with 6 months later going back and then having that weird dream sequence, it just really was, dragged, and it was dragged, and it was messy. But what's your score?
I gave it a 4, and I think you're probably more right. I think that, I don't know why I gave it a 4. I think I like the drop from the technical score of 7 down. I was like, oh geez, I knew it would be a drop off, because I just was like, I definitely was not like satisfied by this ending at all. The only thing that I was happy about was I was kind of like, oh good, the movie's over, which is never a good sign. But even then, like when I thought we were wrapping things up, we like went back into this, like, oh no, we've got more stuff to do here. We've got this weird dream, and I was like so I felt like I was dreaming. Like, I was like, did I fall asleep? And am I like hallucinating this? So maybe I should drop it down to like a 3 for my ending score, because I just was not very satisfied by it. What do you think about the rewatchability?
I gave it a 4, only for the fact that if I do find out that I missed something and I get some sort of perspective shift on it, then maybe I could watch it through a different lens.
Yeah. I gave it a 5 because I might at some point in my life, with several of these Bong Joon-ho movies, go back for a second viewing to see if like Snowpiercer, if I have a different appreciation for it on a second viewing. And so I don't know if I'm going to go back and watch Mickey 17 again in theaters, but I am curious to see if like it hits different on if I just pick up things more on a second viewing once I know what it is I'm in for. So I'm curious about a second viewing, but I
Yeah.
definitely don't think it's one of those movies where like the ending makes me go, oh, I want to go back and watch and see how all the breadcrumbs were laid and stuff like that. So I put it right at a 5, where like I'm open to a rewatch, but I'm not chomping at the bit.
Yeah.
Cultural impact.
I put it at a 4. And I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of Bong Joon-ho's other films will be more influential. And I mean, the reviews that I'm reading, a lot of people are saying, "Oh yeah, it's good," but nobody's really saying that it's great. Or there's not a ton of people saying that it's great. It's very like average. I mean, it's above average compared to other movies, but it's very average for his. Kind of like, "Oh yeah, this was good. Like it was fun to see this, fun to see that," but nobody's like praising it as one of the best sci-fi films ever made.
Yeah, it's kind of like I feel like a lot of critics, just out of respect for Bong Joon-ho,
Yeah.
don't want to pan one of his movies. So they're just
Yeah.
everyone's going like, yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff here. Like there's a lot of fun stuff happening and interesting stuff. And it's like there is. I don't think it all comes together very well. I think this is going to be kind of largely just sort of in when all's said and done in the filmography of Bong Joon-ho, I think this is
Yeah.
going to be like a largely kind of like dismissed or forgotten film. I don't think it's going to tell the story of his career. I
Yeah.
put this at a 4, which it could even go lower. It could even go 3, because I think that this
Mhm.
movie will largely be one that like people aren't going. I don't think it's going to like have a life later on where everyone goes, "Oh, that movie was actually way better than we thought."
Yeah.
I think it'll kind of be one where everyone's like, "Yeah, it was fine," and we don't need to, you know,
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, that's my feeling here. The future might prove us both wrong. Your
Yeah.
subjective score for this film.
My subjective score, I gave a 4, and maybe it should be lower, but I mean the things that were good, but overall just was not satisfying. I didn't love it.
That's how I feel. I really wanted to like this movie. I have it at a 4 as well. And I was really hoping this movie would like break through my whatever my Bong Joon-ho block is.
Mhm.
And it just didn't. And I kept rooting for the film even as I was watching it. I kept waiting for something to happen that would like
Yeah.
pull me in.
Yeah.
And then once like an hour and 15 minutes had gone by, I just was sort of like, okay, I'm ready for the movie to end now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah. I'm
yep.
done. I got it.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. And yeah, that's it. That's Mickey 17. That's our take on Mickey 17. What'd you think? Did you enjoy it? Still think that you should go check out, something like this that's different.
Yeah.
And like, share, subscribe, comment, all those things. And we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.